Hi everyone. Well, I'm back. About once a month is about my speed. So I was wondering whether I should continue with this military bit, which I'm really not very fond of, or whether I should go into some of the travels my wife and I did, like the one to Russia, St. Petersburg to Moscow, and Hungary, and we did Prague, and we did a lot of things. Or whether I should even go into the time before I met my wife, when I had just come over, and after the Yukon. So there are so many options, but okay, I think might as well continue with the military and get that out of the way. Where were we? We were in Erlangen. Erlangen is a garrison town, and I had become a reserve officer candidate and was stationed in Erlangen, and we were just trying to survive, figuring that sooner or later we'll have to go to the front. And since this was a loss proposition anyway, there wasn't too much of an incentive to do this. The big incentive was to try to survive. Well, that night we went into a movie, and it was a colored movie. This was unusual at the time because they were all black and white, but this was an unusual one. It was a new one, and we were interested in it, and we got into the movie, and we were sitting down, and we were having a good time. All the buddies with me, and in the intermission, there was an intermission about after the first reel or so, they turned on the lights, and an announcer came on and said, all the soldiers from the 5th Panzer Regiment immediately return to barracks. Well, that sounded kind of ominous. So we did go back and arrived there in the evening in the barracks, and we're told that we are going to be posted the next day to the front and to get ready. Now, of course, all kinds of emotions are going through you, and you know that this is very much towards the end of the war. It's already in 1945. In May, the war was over, and this was in about March, so we really didn't have much time, and hopefully it wouldn't take all that long. I think it was February or somewhere around there. Well, there had been an accident when they unloaded a truck. One of the boys had inadvertently released a Panzerfaust. Now, Panzerfaust was a bazooka, and he released it right into the truck with all his buddies. And they were short, a lot of people, so they called as an emergency. They got us in. Now, you realize at that stage of the war, we were the little untrained or very poorly trained soldiers, and soldiers, I have to put it in quotes. We considered ourselves such, but in reality, we were a far cry from the famous German soldier at the beginning of the war. So we were the bottom of the barrel, quite frankly. And the only other one that was lower than us were the oldies. These were the guys that could be anywhere from 50, I considered that kind of old at the time, I guess, and until about 70 or 75 even. And they would put them in civilian clothes, put an armband around them, give them a rifle, and send them against Russian well-armed troops. Totally ridiculous nonsense, and we lost a lot of older people that way. But this was the last-ditch effort, and of course Hitler said, if you guys aren't going to win this war, then we might as well all go down in flames. Nice idea, nice thinking. So we were cannon fodder. That's what we were, really. So now we marched off, and we arrived the next day. We left in the afternoon, and we arrived at the front, and this was in Germany already. This was after the Battle of the Bulge had run its course, and these were the very last episodes. This was a night, and no rain. It was a clear night, and you could hear artillery fire, and you could see the flames and see the illumination in the background. The sky was getting kind of reddish, and all of the hits of the artillery were noticeable, and we started marching into this. I remember the time when we marched in a column of 3, and the one in the middle column said, watch out, and then he kept going, and we all went over it, and there must have been some sort of uniform lying on the road, and we didn't realize it at the time, but that was a man, a soldier, who had been flattened by a tank, and there wasn't much left of him, and we stepped right over it, not realizing it. This was our first experience with a fallen soldier. And we had no idea whether he was our own or whether he was an enemy soldier, but whatever. It gave us the shivers. And I made a crack to my buddy. I said, I think it's time to raise my hand now and say, I changed my mind, I want to go home. So that was kind of the feeling, but we had a job to do. And my family was very concerned about not doing anything dishonorable. So we just had to march on and do the best we could. On the next day, we then had to hunker down and dig trenches, dig foxholes, because we were being shelled with artillery fire. Now you have to realize we didn't have equipment anymore to speak of, and the Americans had everything. There was just no end to the equipment. They were not sacrificing their people. They were just throwing in shells and grenades, and they're doing the same thing today. When they can save their people, they will do it, and at the expense of well, peripheral damage, or what do you call it now? There's such nice clean terms for killing innocent people that are bystanders. But that's what happens with that kind of attitude. Of course, it's cannot be prevented. These kind of things do happen in wartime. So we got our food through a field kitchen. It was like looks like a cannon with a chimney, and they had pea soup or bean soup or something of that nature, and they brought it out, and that was very nice, and that was about the only highlight. Then we had to go on patrol all the time to find out where the enemy was and what they were doing, and of course they sent patrols as well, and we had to try to avoid each other. Now, I dug a foxhole, and I got a real deep one. Mine was wonderful. And my best buddy was, there were two guys. There was Molly, and I'd mentioned him before, and there was Johansson. Now, Johansson, I recall his last name. I really, honestly, don't even know his first name anymore. Isn't that a shame? But we were very, very close. And when yeah, they were looking for a volunteer to go across to a building which was in the center of well, it was sort of a clearing, and the people that have tried to go there as to deliver some sort of a message, two of them had been killed by artillery fire because there was an observation plane up high, and they had really got their artillery zeroed in on this area. They couldn't fire on the building. This was a hospital. And so they avoided that, but they did try to get the people going across. And two of them had already gotten a full hit and were blown to bits. And they were looking for a volunteer. Now, I'm not the brave type, and I had a problem with my foot. It was kind of infected, and walking was difficult for me. And I figured, well, if I can make it to that building, I can probably rest, and at the hospital, maybe I can have them look at my foot and see if they can do something about it. And the other thing was that maybe there was a quick way of getting a medal. We're so stupid as young kids, you know. This little piece of metal means so damn much, and it's so ridiculous when you look at it now. But anyway, that was a big deal, and it would be something to bring home and be proud about. So I volunteered, and I had figured out where this plane was, and I saw it, but what they hadn't seen before was that there was a second plane. When the first one got out of the circle, the second one entered it and was much, much higher. And I had figured a way where I figured I could get across. Well, I volunteered for this, and then Johansson came to me and said, Bernie, would you mind if I take your foxhole? And I said, mine, he said, I got rocks down there, and I can't get any deeper, and the artillery fire is getting kind of heavy. I said, sure, why not? I'm not going to be around. So I started making my move, and I went across, and a tank appeared in this clearing. And the commander looked out the turret and started yelling at me like, you know, like a little, come here, for crying out loud, I'm saying come here. I wasn't going to go anywhere near that tank. I figured the tank's going to be a prime target. So I just yelled to him, and I just kept on going. And he was getting madder than hell, and all of a sudden, of course, the plane identified the tank, and they got after him. So I was very fortunate. I made it across to the building, and I went in there. left my message, and had my foot taken care of. And about a couple of hours later, when I got back, I said, where's my buddy, Johansson? Well, he said, Bernie, we got bad news for you. I said, what is it? You got a direct hit on your foxhole. Jesus, I said, where can I see him? He said, well, there's nothing you can see. There's absolutely nothing left. They got a direct hit into the foxhole, and it blew up inside. There's an inch left of him. Well, that was a real shock. And so I went back to the unit, and we spent some time, and about 3 nights later, I had to post guard outside the tents. We had actually confiscated a truck. I think it was an American truck with liquor. And that's a bad thing. You shouldn't do that. And soldiers in that position, when they have this kind of desperation, they'll do anything. I don't drink. I hate drink. I don't even like the smell of liquor. But at that time, I did. And I got totally drunk. And I went outside the tent, and I heaved it. And would you believe the tent got a hit? And when I got back in, I was in there with Molly. Molly had lost both his legs. And that was a real shock. I had a real hard time getting over that. And Molly eventually died of his wounds. So I lost both my buddies. And that was the end of my combat, if you will. We were pretending to shoot at somebody, but you know, you just raise your rifle and shoot in a general direction. You don't shoot at anyone in particular. And that's what the guys in Iraq are doing right now. You see them holding their rifles over their heads, over the wall, and shooting into an area. Of course, they don't see a thing, and they probably don't do much damage, but it makes you feel better. And, well, about 4 weeks or 5 weeks later, we were in an open area trying to get from one area to another, and on the street, cutting this area in two, some American tanks advanced. My buddies made it across, but we got hit by mortar fire, and my neighbor got a bad cut on his neck, and it was bleeding profusely. It was an artery, obviously, that had been hit. So I was bending over him, and I was holding my thumb on his neck, trying to stop the bleeding. And while I was doing that, my buddies had gotten away, and the whole thing was practically all over and done with. And I was still sitting there with my helmet on and my rifle over my shoulder and holding my buddy's wound. And that was how I became a prisoner of war by the Americans. I was taken prisoner, and I wouldn't let go of my buddy. They said, you got to take your helmet off or something. And I said, hell with this, I can't let my hand go. So I managed to at least have him taken care of. I didn't really know him very well, and I don't know what happened to him. But this is how my prisoner of war period started. And I became a prisoner of war in an honorable way. And this was very, very important to me, because if I had given up and raised my hands, that would not have been the proper thing to do. And I would have felt very badly about this. So from now on, I thought I had it made. The war's over. You're going to get food, and you're going to get treated well. Well, that wasn't quite so. I had a very, very bad time ahead of me. And you may or may not know this, but there was a book published by a Canadian company, it is not published in the States, about the treatment of German prisoners by the Americans towards the end of the war. And it was horrific. But, you know, when you look at it in the time period and you realize that the Americans had liberated the concentration camps, of which we really did not know anything. We were not aware of it. We knew there were concentration camps, but we had no idea that they were anything more than camps where you concentrate a number of people, criminals, and it happened to be Jews as well, but we didn't think anything really serious would happen to them. The Nazis certainly didn't advertise that. And when we finally found out about it, of course, we called it a lie, a propaganda. We never believed it until eventually it dawned on us that this was really so. But you have to understand that the soldiers who were taking us prisoner had just gone through this, and they must have seen this. And of course, there was a hatred that built up that was just indescribable. And some of these soldiers, of course, were Jewish. And so every German was, in their eyes, was a major, major criminal. And of course, we were treated accordingly. We weren't given anything to eat. We had no tents. We had nothing. We were sitting out in the open. And, well, anyway, it's a long story, and I don't want to get into it, and I don't want to upset people because they don't know it, and maybe they shouldn't know it, and maybe it's better this way. Anyway, that is the end of my my heroic episode, and there was nothing heroic about it, believe me. So let's quit for now, and let's send you this one, so we'll get this damn period over with. And maybe if you really insist on it, I will go a little further, but I'd rather not. So have a happy day. Bye.